The Krail Dominion's fleet cut through the void like predators at leisure, their hulls gleaming in the light of a distant sun. The human colony below was already in flames, settlements reduced to molten scars and cities nothing more than crumbling skeletons. Admiral Rethkar reclined in his command chair, talons drumming against the armrest. His second-in-command, younger and eager, offered the usual report, resistance negligible, losses none. Rethkar didn't even glance at the displays. He already knew the outcome. Pathetic, he muttered, voice thick with boredom. They scatter like vermin every time we arrive. The bridge crew laughed with him, their scaled throats producing the harsh clicks of amusement. To them, this was routine. Another conquest, another reminder to the galaxy that the Krail were unrivaled. Humans were newcomers to the stars, fragile things clinging to rock and soil, still drunk on their recent leap into interstellar travel. The Dominion had crushed dozens of species stronger and older. This campaign was entertainment more than necessity. Down below, pockets of human resistance fired desperately at the sky with rail guns that couldn't pierce a single Krail shield. Rethkar watched one such battery open fire, each round curving harmlessly away. He allowed himself a grin. They never learn. He ordered a lance of energy fired, and the position vanished in white light. The crew cheered as if the annihilation of a few desperate defenders was worthy of celebration. He rose from his chair, stretching his long limbs. This grows tedious. We should end the human infestation at its source. Strike their cradle, their homeworld, Earth. A hush fell for only a moment before laughter resumed. One of the officers, Commander Zal, tilted his head. An amusing proposal, Admiral. Their colonies are weak enough. Their homeworld will be no different. Exactly. Rethkar's eyes gleamed with the anticipation of spectacle. Imagine the terror across the galaxy when word spreads that humanity's birthplace lies in ash. They will know resistance to us is hopeless. Approval spread quickly through the command deck. Arrogance was as common among the Krail as breath. They prided themselves on ending wars before they truly began, relying on reputation as much as strength. Earth would be another feather in their crown, another reminder that no species could match their supposed mastery of war. Weeks later, the fleet arrived at the Sol system. Their ships descended with methodical precision, their engines blotting out the stars. From orbit, Earth looked serene, blue oceans glittering beneath swirls of white cloud. Rethkar found the view almost insulting. How could a species born in such beauty possess the will to fight? Human defenses appeared laughable, a scattering of orbital platforms, antiquated frigates, drones darting like flies. The Dominion's tactical screens marked each target as insignificant. Commanders mocked the enemy openly. They cling to relics, Zal sneered. Do they think those toys will delay us? Perhaps they hope we'll mistake this for strength, another officer added. The bridge broke into laughter again. The first salvo destroyed 3 orbital platforms, their wreckage falling like embers into the atmosphere. Human frigates rushed forward, their formations ragged, their weapons outdated. The Krail cut through them with surgical ease. Rethkar yawned. This is their defense. He gestured lazily at the carnage. The galaxy overestimated them. They are prey masquerading as predators. But as the battle unfolded, a sliver of unease gnawed at him. The humans fought, yes, but too erratically, almost like they were buying time rather than protecting anything. Their retreats felt deliberate, as if they were guiding the Krail's advance instead of resisting it. He dismissed the thought, though it lingered at the edges of his mind. Earth itself did not launch its full defenses. Cities remained powered, communications intact. It was not the frantic chaos he expected when a species' home faced annihilation. Instead, it felt staged, as if the planet were presenting a carefully constructed illusion of weakness. The first officer leaned closer, voice low. Admiral, why do they not resist harder? Rethkar waved the concern aside. Because they know it is futile. Yet his eyes narrowed. Futility did not look like this. It looked like panic, not calm withdrawal. Suddenly, static crackled across their sensors. Interference spread, not from human weapons, but from a coordinated disruption field blanketing the battlefield. Display panels flickered. Target locks failed. The bridge crew scrambled to compensate. Then the shadow appeared. From behind Earth's moon, a vast shape slid into view. Not another fragile frigate, not another relic platform, but ship unlike anything the Krail had encountered. Its hull was black and angular, bristling with weaponry, its silhouette sharp against the pale light of Earth. It moved with deliberate grace, engines humming like a predator uncoiling after a long sleep. The bridge fell silent. Even Rethkar's laughter died in his throat. "What is that?" whispered Zal. On the display, the human battleship's designation flashed in cold letters, Resolute. Rethkar squinted at it, searching for weakness, but the vessel radiated strength. It dwarfed their cruisers, and its surface shimmered with shielding beyond their comprehension. His officers shifted uneasily, their scales paling. "It is one ship," Rethkar said finally, his tone forced. "One ship against a fleet of 60. Crush it." Weapons fire lanced through the void, brilliant arcs of plasma and energy converging on the Resolute. For a heartbeat, the human ship seemed to vanish within the storm. Rethkar's lips curled into a smirk. But then the storm bent. Energy twisted around the ship's shields, absorbed, redirected, and hurled back in devastating pulses. Krail cruisers staggered, 2 shields collapsing instantly under their own reflected fire. The Resolute did not flinch. "Impossible," an officer gasped. Rethkar gripped his chair, talons digging into the armrest. His pride battled with an unfamiliar sensation creeping into his chest, fear. He barked for concentrated fire, for maneuvers, for something, anything to bring the human battleship down. The Resolute answered with precision. No wild barges, no waste. Beams of light cut neatly through engines, leaving ships adrift but intact. Missiles streaked forward, disabling weapons arrays without obliterating hulls. The humans weren't annihilating. They were demonstrating. Silence spread across the Krail bridge as ship after ship fell quiet, crippled but not destroyed. The display screens bloomed with red icons marking disabled vessels. Rethkar's officers exchanged glances, the bravado bleeding from their eyes. Then a voice filled the comms, clear, calm, undeniably human. "You've mistaken us for victims," it said. "That was your last mistake." The words cut through Rethkar, more deeply than any weapon. They were not a threat shouted in desperation, but a quiet certainty spoken by those who had waited, prepared, and now revealed their hand. For the first time in his career, Admiral Rethkar felt the cold realization that he was not the predator. He was the prey, and the hunt had just begun. The human battleship drifted through the shattered formation with unsettling poise, as though the destruction it had wrought was nothing more than an opening gesture. Admiral Rethkar's claws tapped furiously against the arm of his chair. The Krail Dominion had fought wars across half the galaxy, crushed empires older than humanity's first cities, yet never had he seen such a display of control. It was not brutality, not recklessness, but something colder, restraint. The Resolute held its fire after the first strikes. Its weapons tracked across the fleet with surgical precision, but did not unleash annihilation. The choice was deliberate, Rethkar realized. They were showing him what they could do, and withholding the rest. On the human bridge, Captain Adrian Voss stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her gaze calm, her voice measured. She had no need to raise her tone. Targeting solutions are confirmed. Disable the next 3 cruisers. No kills. Her officers obeyed without hesitation, their movements efficient, almost mechanical. There was no triumph in their expressions, no exhilaration at crippling an enemy fleet. Only the gravity of a duty long prepared for. As the Krail scrambled, another barrage reflected back from the Resolute's shimmering shields. 2 Dominion destroyers spun helplessly, their propulsion gutted. Silence settled among Rethkar's officers, broken only by the hiss of failing consoles. "Why do they hold back?" Zal whispered. His voice, usually thick with arrogance, trembled. Rethkar did not answer. He was beginning to suspect the truth. Humans were not improvising, not fighting desperately for survival. They had planned this. Every movement of their retreating frigates, every delay in Earth's defenses, even the scattered skirmishes, they had all been calculated to lure the Dominion into this precise position. He tried to deny it, but his mind betrayed him, recalling every past victory. The Krail had always relied on overwhelming force and reputation. The enemy's terror often crippled them before battle truly began. But the humans had shown no such fear. Their weakness had been staged, their helplessness a mask. On the Resolute's bridge, Voss leaned forward as another report came in. Enemy command ship identified. Admiral Rethkar by profile and signal patterns. She studied the alien vessel on her screen. For years, she had read the reports, memorized the Dominion's tactics, their doctrine of intimidation and swift, merciless destruction. Now, she was looking directly at its architect. She imagined his expression, the dawning realization spreading like frost across his pride. "Patch him through," she said. The comms crackled, and Rethkar's voice filled the chamber. "You cannot win. You are outnumbered 60-1. Surrender now, and perhaps we shall grant your species the mercy of extinction without humiliation." Voss answered in the same measured tone she had carried throughout the engagement. "Admiral, you're already defeated. The only question is how long you will take to accept it." A murmur rippled through her officers. The words were not shouted. They were spoken as fact, and that truth weighed more heavily than any threat. Rethkar silenced his bridge crew with a glare. His pride demanded defiance, but his instincts whispered caution. He cut the channel and turned to his officers. "Find their weakness. No ship is invincible." But the scans revealed nothing comprehensible. Their shielding systems behaved unlike anything in Dominion records. Their weapons fired with uncanny accuracy, guided by algorithms beyond the Krail zone. Every attempt to disrupt their communications failed, met with counter-intrusions that nearly compromised the Dominion's networks. The humans had outpaced them. Somehow, in silence, under the Dominion's very nose, they had leapt forward in warcraft. Rethkar's disbelief curdled into dread when reports began to arrive from outside the system. Entire Dominion fleets, sent to blockade the outer colonies, were being ambushed. Invisible ships emerged from nowhere, striking with precision before vanishing into space, as though the void itself sheltered them. Supply lines fractured. Communications splintered. It was too coordinated to be chance. On the Resolute, Voss listened as intelligence flowed in from across the theater. Her voice carried no triumph, only grim acknowledgement. "They are beginning to understand," she said to her first officer. "But too late." He nodded, though his eyes betrayed unease. "They'll fight harder now that they know. Desperation breeds recklessness." "Then we'll remind them why we waited," she replied. Rethkar sat rigid as more data streamed across his console. His mind churned, clawing for reassurance. He demanded to see human history files, everything the Dominion had gathered on this species. Perhaps some clue lay hidden there. He accessed them with shaking claws. Grainy footage filled the screen, men scrambling from trenches, artillery raining fire, across fields turned to mud and corpses. Another sequence, firestorms consuming cities, mushroom clouds unfurling above ruined landscapes. Then footage of men in jungles, ambushes striking from shadows, children with rifles clutched in hands too small to bear them. The catalog was endless, wars without pause, one age of slaughter feeding into the next. The Admiral's breath rasped in his throat. The Dominion had always claimed to be masters of war, but their wars had been campaigns of dominance, swift and decisive. Humanity's history was different. They did not conquer to end conflict. They had lived in it, forged their very identity within it. Their entire civilization was a furnace that had tempered them in violence for millennia. Rethkar recoiled as another image filled the screen. The ruins of Hiroshima, bodies outlined in ash against stone. The devastation was horrifying, but worse than the destruction was the knowledge that humans had done it to themselves. They had not needed an alien enemy to drive them to such extremes. They had invented war against their own kind long before the stars had called them outward. He slammed the console shut, but the images lingered. His officers looked at him, awaiting commands, their scales pale with doubt. The myth of their invincibility was fracturing in real time. Rethkar's pride demanded he rally them, but his instincts whispered another truth. This war had already been lost the moment the humans revealed their hand. He looked at the display of the Resolute, its guns still idle, its shields glowing with unreadable energy, and he finally understood. The humans had not come to resist. They had come to end the Dominion's illusion of supremacy. On the human bridge, Voss gave her next order, her voice steady. "Transmit our message to the Dominion capital. Let them know this is their one chance to step back. If they don't, the next phase begins." Her officers worked swiftly, relays pulsing as the signal leapt across the void. Voss stared at the tactical map, the fleet of crippled Dominion ships adrift, and she felt no satisfaction. This was not a victory to save her, but a burden to carry. Humanity had chosen patience, chosen silence, until the moment came to reveal what they had become. The Resolute's hull shimmered in the starlight, implacable and unyielding, and the silence that followed was heavier than any barrage. Rethkar sat in the shadows of his failing bridge, the echoes of human wars still seared into his mind, and for the first time in his life, he wondered not how to win, but whether. The Dominion War Council chamber blazed with light, its high walls adorned with banners proclaiming victories that suddenly felt like hollow boasts. Holographic projections of crippled fleets flickered above the central dais, each one a wound carved into the illusion of invincibility. Admirals and governors argued in sharp tones, their pride cracking under the weight of recent defeats. "They are only one world," a governor snarled. "How could they possibly challenge the Dominion's reach? We have fleets spanning 100 systems." Rethkar stood at the center, scales dulled from exhaustion, eyes haunted by images he could not erase, trenches, firestorms, children with rifles. His voice cut through the chamber with a quiet intensity that silenced the clamor. "You misunderstand what we face. Humanity is not merely one world. They are a people who have lived with war longer than we have known civilization. You call them prey, but they are predators who have hidden their claws until now." A murmur spread. Some laughed nervously, unwilling to believe. Others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to meet his gaze. Pride was their armor, and without it they would feel naked. One admiral rose, sneering. "You sound afraid, Rethkar. I have fought the Talon, the Vrynn, and the Sova. None stood against us. Why should these humans be different?" Rethkar's jaw tightened. He wanted to shout the truth, but shouting would only harden their arrogance. Instead, he spoke with cold restraint. "Because those others fought for survival. The humans fight with patience. They let us strike first, let us believe ourselves strong. And now, they strike with precision that we cannot match." The chamber dissolved into argument again. Some demanded immediate escalation, the mobilization of every fleet. Others urged caution, whispers of surrender creeping in like poison. The council fractured, unity collapsing under the pressure of doubt. Meanwhile, far from their squabbles, the Resolute prowled through Krail space. Captain Adrian Voss stood at her command post, eyes fixed on the tactical map blooming with Dominion outposts. Her crew worked in silence, tension sharpened into efficiency. They knew what was at stake, not conquest, but demonstration. The message had to be clear. Humanity would not be underestimated again. Phase 2 confirmed, her first officer reported. "Wormhole corridors are stable. Drone fleets are standing by." Voss gave the smallest nod. "Execute." Across the void, hidden human flotillas emerged from wormholes like phantoms. Swarms of autonomous drones spilled forth, attacking supply depots and severing communications. Stations fell silent without being destroyed, their weapons neutralized, their crews forced into stasis. The strategy was relentless but surgical, eroding the Dominion structure without drowning it in blood. Reports filtered into Rethkar's command ship, each one another nail in the coffin. Outposts gone. Convoys vanished. Fleets disoriented, ships turning on each other as communications collapsed under human interference. The Dominion's strength was crumbling not from frontal assault, but from dissolution. On the bridge of the Resolute, Voss listened to the stream of updates. Her face betrayed no triumph. "They built their empire on fear," she said softly. "Now fear is eating them alive." Her officers said nothing, but in their silence lay a truth they all understood. They were dismantling not only a military force, but a myth. Rethkar watched his empire unravel on the tactical screens. Each red icon blinked out with ruthless inevitability, not obliterated, but silenced. He realized the humans were waging not a war of destruction, but a war of humiliation. The Dominion had claimed a master war, yet here they were, outmaneuvered, outthought, reduced to confusion and dread. He called for a retreat to consolidate what forces remained, but even as he gave the order, he knew it was futile. The humans anticipated every move, wormholes opening where his fleets sought refuge, the Resolute arriving like a shadow that could not be outrun. When the decisive confrontation came, it was not in Dominion space, but at the edge of a barren system, where Rethkar had gathered his remaining loyal ships. The Resolute emerged at the heart of the formation, its presence as implacable as the judgment it carried. The battle was unlike any Rethkar had fought. The Dominion poured fire into the human flagship, desperate, reckless. But the Resolute's shields bent the assault back, turning fury into futility. Human fleets materialized around the edges, encircling the Dominion ships. Drone swarms cut through escorts with clinical detachment. Rethkar's officers cried for vengeance, for defiance, but their voices were hollow. Every maneuver collapsed against the wall of human strategy. It was as if the humans already knew each move before it was made, their tactics unfolding with a precision that felt less like combat and more like inevitability. On the Resolute's bridge, Voss spoke her next order in the same calm tone she had used since the beginning. Disable their flagships. Leave them adrift. Beams of light lanced out, not to kill but to strip away engines, weapons, shields. Dominion vessels fell silent, drifting like carcasses in the void. Rethkar's command ship shook violently, alarm screaming, but still the humans did not strike the killing blow. He stood, gripping the rail, staring at the image of the Resolute on his display. The ship loomed larger than any nightmare, silent, patient, unyielding. In that moment, the truth struck him fully. The Dominion had never mastered war. They had mastered intimidation. Humanity had mastered survival. He felt the weight of his officers' eyes on him, waiting for orders that no longer mattered. Pride clawed at him, urging defiance, but another voice whispered louder now. Reason, fear, the understanding that survival lay not in resistance, but in acceptance. The comms flared. Voss's voice, steady and cold, filled the bridge. Admiral Rethkar, this is your final chance. Stand down. We do not seek your extinction, but if you continue, we will end this war before another cycle passes. Her words held no rage, no cruelty. They were a sentence delivered without malice, an inevitability offered like a hand or a blade. Rethkar's throat tightened. For the first time in his life, he felt what countless others had felt before the Dominion, helplessness before a greater power. And yet, beneath the humiliation, there was a strange clarity. The humans were not reveling in victory. They were burdened by it, carrying the weight of a responsibility they had never desired but had prepared for nonetheless. The silence stretched, the battle already lost, the war collapsing into inevitability. Rethkar exhaled long and slow, his claws unclenching from the rail. He had to decide not how to win, but how to surrender with what dignity remained. The Resolute held its position, guns quiet, engines steady, as though it had all the time in the universe. Humanity was no longer reacting. They were dictating. The Dominion's age of fear was ending. Rethkar knew it, his officers knew it, and the galaxy would soon learn it too. The only question that lingered, heavy and unspoken, was what kind of rulers humanity would choose to become. The war ended not with the thunder of weapons, but with silence. Dominion ships drifted powerless across half a dozen systems, their engines gutted, their shields stripped, their crews forced to stare into the abyss that had once been their certainty. The Krail banners, once feared across the galaxy, fluttered now in broken data streams, empty symbols of a strength no longer believed in. Admiral Rethkar sat slumped in his command chair, watching the wreckage of his fleet circle slowly in the void. Pride had abandoned him, leaving behind a hollow weight in his chest. The comms crackled with desperate pleas from his subordinates, requests for orders, for miracles, for anything, but his mouth remained dry. He had nothing left to give. The Dominion had not merely been beaten, it had been unmasked. A sudden ping broke through the static, a signal from the human battleship still looming in silent dominance at the heart of the battlefield. The Resolute's guns tracked his ship, steady and patient, yet unmoving. They could have ended him with a thought. Instead, they waited. He accepted the transmission. Captain Adrian Voss appeared before him, her image projected in sharp relief. Her eyes carried no triumph, no malice. Only the burden of someone who had done what was necessary. She spoke plainly, her voice calm, as though she were discussing terms of trade rather than the fate of an empire. Admiral Rethkar, the Dominion is finished. Your fleets are scattered. Your worlds rise against you. Your reputation has already collapsed. But extinction is not our goal. We offer you one chance to end this war without further loss. Rethkar's throat tightened. You would spare us, after what we've done to your colonies. Voss did not blink. We do not measure ourselves by your cruelty. We measure ourselves by what we refuse to become. The words struck him deeper than any weapon. Mercy, not dominance, defined their victory. And yet that mercy carried its own sting. It forced him to see the gulf between them. The Dominion had believed it mastered war because it wielded fear as a tool. The humans mastered it because they had learned to bear its cost without letting it consume them. Your empire will disarm, Voss continued. Your fleets will be dismantled. Systems under your control will govern themselves. And you, Admiral, will serve as liaison between us and what remains of your people. You will ensure compliance. Humiliation surged in him, sharp as acid. To serve as conquerors, to wear the collar of survival, it was an indignity beyond measure. Yet, as he looked at the wreckage outside his viewport, at the officers around him too broken to meet his gaze, he understood there was no alternative. Extinction or survival. Pride or preservation. He bowed his head. I will serve. Voss inclined her head slightly. It was not a gesture of victory, but of acknowledgement. Then this war is over. The transmission ended, leaving Rethkar staring at the empty air where her image had been. He felt the eyes of his bridge crew on him, not accusing, not defiant, but hollow, waiting for someone to carry them into this new reality. For the first time, he did not feel like a master of war. He felt like a survivor. On the Resolute, silence held for a long moment after the channel closed. The crew exhaled, some in relief, some in unease. They had won, but did not feel like triumph. Voss stood still, her gaze on the tactical map where Dominion fleets had once blazed with hostile strength. Now they were scattered embers, powerless against the tide that had swept over them. Her first officer approached quietly. It's done. The Dominion is finished. Voss's lips pressed into a thin line. No, this was only the beginning. Ending them was never the goal. Now comes the harder part. He frowned, holding it together. She nodded. We showed the galaxy what we are capable of. That kind of fear doesn't fade. It festers. We have to decide what we become in its shadow. She walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars, their cold light unyielding. Humanity had never sought to rule beyond Earth. Yet war had forced them to reveal a strength they could not now hide. The Dominion had awakened something that might never sleep again. Far across the council halls of the Dominion capital, panic spread. News of surrender ignited revolts, systems declaring independence, governors scrambling to protect themselves. The once unified empire fractured into shards overnight. Whispers carried through the galaxy. The humans had brought down the Krail with one ship, one fleet, one moment of ruthless precision. Fear spread faster than any weapon. And yet, aboard the Resolute, there was no celebration. Voss dismissed her officers for rest, but she remained alone on the bridge. Her hand brushed across the console, her thoughts heavy. She remembered the recordings of Earth's own wars, the trenches, the mushroom clouds, the firestorms, and wondered if humanity had only mirrored its own reflection upon the stars. She whispered, almost to herself, we never wanted this, but perhaps we were always waiting for it. Behind her, the stars stretched vast and indifferent. The galaxy had shifted, and nothing would return to what it had been. Humanity stood now not as prey, not as victim, but as arbiter. And with that power came a weight heavier than any weapon. In the quiet aftermath, Rethkar sat alone in his quarters. His officers had left him, scattered to their duties. He stared at his reflection in the darkened viewport, seeing not an admiral but a relic. He thought of the countless species he had mocked, crushed, enslaved, and for the first time, he understood them. The fear, the helplessness, the bitter knowledge that their fate lay in hands not their own. Yet he also remembered Voss's eyes, not cruel, not gloating, but steady with responsibility. In her gaze, he had seen something alien and yet strangely enviable, the strength to win without delighting in victory. Perhaps serving them would not be a collar, but a lesson. The Dominion had claimed to master war. But true mastery, he realized, was not in domination but in restraint. The Resolute turned slowly, its engines igniting, its silhouette vast against the stars. It did not pursue vengeance. It did not finish what it could so easily have ended. It left behind silence, a silence more terrifying than fire, because it promised that humanity had not yet unleashed all it could. In that silence, a new order was born, not carved by conquest, but by patience, precision, and the quiet certainty of a species that had endured its own worst nightmares and survived. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Captain Adrian Voss closed her eyes, inhaling the stillness of her bridge. The war is over, she said at last. But even as the words left her lips, she knew the truth. The war had only just begun.